And do you like to play, need to play, want to play in this game?
Yes, and yes. Yeah, I would. Like I said, I would love to get as many reps as I can. Just it's been how many months since I've actually stepped on a football field to take a hit or play kind of, I know it's preseason, but still just meaningful type reps. And so with the newness of it, I definitely like to get as much as I can.
You know, the emphasis for this outing as it pertains to the quarterback position is getting Ben his first in-stadium exposure of the preseason.
Slight difference between the quarterback and the head coach about the objective for week 2 of the preseason for Ben Roethlisberger. And, this isn't as ridiculous as it may sound if you haven't paid close attention to Ben Roethlisberger over the years. I personally think, Charean, that Ben Roethlisberger has seen how Dwayne Haskins has looked. He's heard the buzz about Dwayne Haskins setting himself up to be the successor to Ben Roethlisberger, and he's feeling a little urgency to reestablish the fact that the guy who won a couple of Super Bowls, the guy who's on track for the Hall of Fame, the guy who became Big Ben and is still one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, still hasn't retired. He's here. I'd like to let everyone know that. I feel like there's an element of that, of Ben getting sick of hearing about Dwayne Haskins and wanting to come back and show that it's not the Dwayne Haskins show just yet.
Well, I think there's also, Mike, a bad taste in his mouth for how last season ended, right? This team started out 11-0, and frankly, he was terrible down the stretch. And you look at the playoff game with what they did against Cleveland, that should leave a terrible taste in your mouth and want you to get back on the football field, and he hasn't had that chance yet. So the preseason gives him a chance to do that with a new offensive coordinator, a new system, and a few new weapons. Mostly the same guys are out there, but a new offensive line anyway to try to get adjusted to them. So there's probably a lot of reasons he wants to get on the field. And maybe Dwayne Haskins has a little bit to do with that, Mike. But Big Ben needs to show that he's still got at least one more year left in him at 39 years old and in his 18th season.
Detroit Lions coming to town Saturday night to take on the Steelers at Heinz Field. And the other reality for many players, and the Steelers among them, they had no fans at all last year. So the idea of going into Heinz Field, that because it's a Saturday night game, because the fans weren't there last year, I suspect it will be fairly full. And it's the in-stadium experience that he will get at a minimum, according to Mike Tomlin. We'll see how many reps he gets. But there's no point. And this is part of the tension that Urban Meyer dealt with during the Jaguars preseason opener. He wants to play all his starters. He wants to play to win the game. He's not thinking, because he's got no NFL experience, he's not thinking this game doesn't count. It's a football game. It feels like a football game. We want to win the football game, and that's where you have to realize, you got to reel it in. You don't want to go out there and put yourself in a bad spot because you overdid it in a game that means absolutely nothing. But I feel like this is going to be the last year for Big Ben. I've believed that by the time we get to November or December, either the team or Roethlisberger will regret this one last ride, even though they're now saying, well, he could play in 2022. I think that the body's breaking down. He's on the brink of 40. He's not been on the TB12 method. And even when the report came out that he disputed that. No, I won't eat that avocado ice cream. I think this is it for Ben. And, we'll see if it holds together for the Steelers, and we'll see what they can do in one of the more competitive divisions in football. Where do you put them in the AFC North this year?
A lot depends on Ben Roethlisberger. And, it felt like to me, Mike, that last year was his last year. I never expected him to come back. I thought he was done, especially the way he sat on the bench there at the end of the season after the game had ended, and he's sitting with a couple teammates, and it felt like his last season. And so does he have another season in him? Can he do it again? I mean, he's another year removed from elbow surgery, but it all depends on how he plays, frankly. I mean, we know their defense is going to be great. They're going to keep him in every game. They always do. They always make a ton of turnovers. We know what that defense is built on. We know what they're going to do. They're going to be very, very good. Is Ben Roethlisberger going to be good enough to get that team to compete with the Ravens, with the Browns. I would probably put them third now, would have them in as a wild card team. We know how long it's been since they've had a losing season. They're not going to have a losing season simply because of that defense. They're going to have a winning record, but where are they going to be in that division? I still right now would put them behind the Ravens, and I would put them behind the Browns.
Those images of Ben Roethlisberger with Marquise Pouncey after the playoff loss to the Browns. And Roethlisberger had said in the past, I'm staying as long as Pouncey stays. Well, Pouncey left, and Ben still stayed. The offensive line has had major turnover. Alejandro Villanueva, left tackle, is gone. David DeCastro, Pro Bowl guard, is gone. Pouncey is gone. Kevin Filer signed with the Chargers. You got one starter on the offensive line back. And back before our hiatus, Big Cat tried to argue with me it's actually a good thing because they all stunk last year. You may as well play other guys. No. You don't want 80% turnover on your offensive line because those were the best guys you had. It's not like they went out and drafted and signed a bunch of guys who are going to come in and fill those spots. So it feels experimental to me on offense this year. You've got all these new offensive linemen. You've got Matt Canada who took over the offense. It was too predictable last year. They got away from the running game. They were throwing the short passes. That thing that came out, and I think this came out during our hiatus and we haven't talked about it on the show, the tell that someone spotted that apparently has been there for years. When Ben Roethlisberger's in shotgun, if his foot is flat, if his back foot, left foot, as he's getting ready to take the snap, is flat, it's either the left foot or the right foot. One of the 2 feet, the trail foot is flat, it's a handoff. If the heel is up, it's a pass. And apparently it's foolproof that that's been there. Now, number one, you got to get rid of that. Number two, presumably defenses have figured it out at some point. Number three, how the hell did they run an offense at all if they were giving away in shotgun formation every time, whether or not it's a run or a pass? Those are the kinds of things they have to iron out because they were too predictable last year, and they didn't run the ball nearly enough. They used the first-round pick on Najee Harris. They've got to establish the run, and look at where PointsBet has the Steelers for division winner. And as Charean suggests, third behind the Ravens and the Browns, plus 460. Poor Bengals. But, look, Mike Tomlin will always make them better than they are. The question is, how good can he make this group?
Well, and, Ben Roethlisberger threw 608 passes last season. I'm going to be shocked if he throws even close to that this season, and he shouldn't. That's why they drafted Najee Harris. They were so bad running the ball between the offensive line and the running backs that they did have to put it on Roethlisberger. I expect them to be a good running team this year, to get back to their roots, defense and a running game, and they'll be in every game, and they'll pull out some games and let Ben work his magic late in games. But they don't need him throwing 608 times, which he plays all 17 games, and he only played 15 last season. Will be more than that. So they need to get that number down, run the ball much better than they did last year, and they'll have a chance to compete with those other two teams for the division title, Mike.
There is this element within the organization where they kind of tiptoe around Ben Roethlisberger, but some of the chatter last year was, for example, when it was an RPO type of a play, a run-pass option, where he is in shotgun, and he can decide whether to hand it off or throw it. He was throwing it, and he threw it too much. So you take that, you combine the tell, and we wonder why so many receivers are dropping passes that go 5 yards past the line of scrimmage when pre-snap the defensive backs and the linebackers have a pretty good idea of passes coming, so they're able to load up and go after the receiver and try to jar the ball loose. Yeah, you're going to have more drops when the defense knows Juju Smith-Schuster's coming, my way, and the ball's being thrown. I'm going to go hit him and try to make him drop the ball. Guess what? They're going to drop the ball when they know it's coming. That's a critical aspect of trying to make the offense work. So we'll see if Matt Canada can fix it. We'll see if Ben can get it right. And maybe it's not a Dwayne Haskins thing. Maybe Ben truly wants to be out on the field so he can get comfortable with this new offense. And the offense is going to be the key, because you're right. The defense is always going to be good. But this team is only going to go as far as this revamped offense with all those new offensive linemen, with the new rookie running back, with the old Ben Roethlisberger, with a new offensive coordinator, will take them. And it just feels like, to me, it's too many jumbled, mismatched parts like a Frankenstein monster. I choose to think they're going to struggle on offense this year, but we'll see. I'll happily be wrong, but I feel like it's not going to work.
Isn't it amazing, Mike, though, if he's had this tell, how competitive the Steelers still have been despite that? And why hasn't it been fixed to this point? I mean, the Steelers should have picked up on that, too, if other teams were picking up on that. But they're competitive every single year. They'll be competitive this year. It's just how good are they going to be?
All due respect to the Steelers organization and the assistant coaches, but post Bruce Arians, because Arians got retired by the Steelers. He's had a great football retirement, two-time coach of the year and Super Bowl champion since he retired nearly a decade ago. Mike Tomlin is such a good coach that he compensates for the fact that for most of the last decade, he hasn't really had a great staff. And I don't know how much say he has over the staff, especially the coordinators. I think somebody else hiring the organization hires like a Todd Haley, and makes those bigger decisions, and Tomlin just deals with whatever he's given. But he's such a good coach that he can overcome that, because I really do think, frankly, it's not an all-star staff of assistants in Pittsburgh, and it hasn't been since Dick LeBeau and Bruce Arians. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I really do feel like there's an element of that in Pittsburgh, and Tomlin's spending a lot of his time trying to overcome that.
Yeah, and I hadn't really thought about that, Mike, and they do change coaches quite a bit. I mean, you don't see, as long as Tomlin's been there, those coaches stay with him, especially the coordinators, and perhaps there's a reason for that. I don't know, but I do agree with you how good of a coach Mike Tomlin is. And you think back a couple years ago, even last year to some extent, people were talking about Steelers fans, Mike Tomlin needs to go. I'm thinking, are you crazy? I mean, there'd be 30 other teams wanting Mike Tomlin. Not really that many, because not that many would change teams. But he's one of the best coaches in the NFL, and you can't dispute that based on what his record is over the years. I realize how long it's been since they won a Super Bowl. I get that, and the Steelers want to win more Super Bowls. This is not the 1970s. You're not going to win 2-4 Super Bowls all the time. But he's had them competitive every single year. He's had them in the conversation. He's had them as a contender. Despite the turnover with his assistant coaches, despite the changes in personnel, Steelers are always there. And the one constant in that is Mike Tomlin.
If and when the Steelers would part ways with Tomlin, he would become the top candidate for every vacancy that already existed. And then beyond that, I firmly believe there would be teams who otherwise were sticking with their head coach who would say, we've changed our mind. We're going to go get Mike Tomlin. Now, you don't want to throw out the guy you have that you're happy with if you aren't sure you're going to get Mike Tomlin, but you at least may make some phone calls about whether or not you can get Mike Tomlin, because there would be teams, a lot of teams, that would say, thanks for everything to a head coach they otherwise would have kept, and go get Mike Tomlin if they think they can. And those Steelers fans, and it happens every year, whenever they hit adversity, there's a group of Steelers fans that want to get rid of him. Be very, very careful what you wish for, because Tomlin instantly would have multiple options at his disposal.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.